If you have topics you would like to have us discuss on the Aging Well podcast, please click on the links in the episode description to send us a text or record your message or comments. We'd love to hear from you and how we can help you age well. If you benefit from the Aging Well podcast and would like to support the content financially, please click on the Support the Show link or support our affiliates and advertisers. Welcome to the Aging Well podcast. I'm Jeff Armstrong here with Corbin Bruton. In this and the episodes that follow, we will share candid discussions on aging and hear from the experts. We are here to inform and encourage as we experience, aging. According to the CDC, every second of every day, an older adult age 65 and over suffers a fall in the United States, making falls the leading cause of injury and injury death in this age group. 1 out of 4 older adults will fall each year in the United States, making falls a public health concern, particularly among the aging population. In this episode, I visit the Dallas Retirement Village in Dallas, Oregon, to present a talk on fall prevention and core control. Join me and the residents of Dallas Retirement Village as we discuss how to reduce the risk of falling, Carmine's Law, how to increase strength, improve posture to improve balance, and the role of the spiral line in core training. Okay, I do have a mic on because I can hear myself very loudly. This is unusual for me. I teach at Western Oregon University. Tiffany was one of my students a couple years ago, more than a couple, but not that long ago. And I never have this many students in a classroom, so I'm feeling like I'm almost in like a huge auditorium classroom. So I appreciate the opportunity to speak with you all today. Tiffany invited me a couple months ago, I guess, and asked me to come out and speak, and I love doing this kind of stuff, so here I am. So we're going to start today. Today's topic is fall prevention and core control. If you don't know what core control is, you will by the end of today. Hope to make it relevant and interesting, so we will see. So got to figure out the little controls here. Why talk about fall prevention? And I think for most of it, it's probably pretty obvious. It is a critical factor as we age that we protect ourselves and prevent ourselves from falling. According to the CDC, and this statistic was kind of shocking when I did see it, that every second of every day, an adult age 65 or over suffers a fall in the U.S., making falls the leading cause of injury and injury death in this age group. 1 out of 4 older adults will fall each year in the United States, making falls a public health concern, particularly among the aging population. So this is why we want to talk about preventing falls. Some other facts about falls. Hopefully you can read that. And the lady in the back was concerned about the emails earlier. Is this going to be large enough, I hope, for you to be able to see? Good. If not, I'll kind of read it to you. It's again, from the CDC, about 36 million falls are reported among older adults each year, results in more than 32,000 deaths. Each year, about 3 million older adults are treated in emergency departments for a fall injury. 1 out of 5 adults will fall, or 1 out of every 5 falls causes an injury. Each year, about 300,000 older adults are hospitalized from hip fractures. More than 95% of hip fractures are caused by falling. Usually this fall is sideways. We'll talk a little bit more about that. And women fall more often than men and account for about 3/4 of all hip fractures. I know this sounds a bit dismal, and I don't mean to start off with really bad news, but I think this is avoidable. And that's what we're going to talk about today. What do we do to minimize our risks of falls? And a couple of important points here. First thing is talk to your doctor. Keep communication with your doctor. If you're on medications, talk about those medications. How are they going to impact your perception? Being able to, maintain your balance. Are they going to cause you any sleepiness that might cause you a tendency to fall, dizziness, those types of things? And if you're experiencing dizziness from the medications, communicate that with the doctor. I think a lot of this is all pretty obvious, but it's always helpful to have a bit of a reminder. Have your eyes checked annually. I don't do that as well as I should, so I should probably start getting my annual appointments as well. My eyes haven't changed too much yet, but the better we can maintain our vision, the better we're able to see the things that are around us and avoid falls. Have your feet checked. Something else we don't tend to think about, going to a podiatrist on a regular basis to make sure our feet are healthy and those types of things. And also, discuss with your doctor proper footwear. I didn't see anybody wearing stiletto heels or anything like that today, so that's probably good news, especially you guys, because you might not have quite the same control and balance that the women will have. But wearing the right kind of shoes can also help to prevent falls as well. So today I want to talk about the staying active part. That's my area. I'm an exercise physiologist. I worked with a range of populations from children to, I think the oldest personal training client I ever had was 84, had never lifted weights in his life, and came to me having seen a tough study that was done. This was probably almost 25 years ago. Saw a study that had shown that exercise in individuals in this age group actually benefited the population to where they wouldn't need their walkers and assistive devices quite as much. And he walked in with a cane, very slow gait, slower than anybody I saw walking in today. Kind of reminded me of Tim Conway, if you remember Tim Conway from back in the day, a little bit he used to do. He walked about that slow, and his goal was to get rid of the cane and to improve his gait. And I worked with him for about 3 months, and we saw some very dramatic improvements. He was starting to just kind of have to carry the cane. And so that was his goal. And I think it's a very useful goal. All of us, no matter what the age, can stand to be more active. Recently, during COVID, I came across a statistic that the current estimate in the United States is that fewer than 23% of the US population meets the minimum, that's the minimum activity guidelines that are set by the American Heart Association and the American College for Sports Medicine. So obviously, the majority of us can increase our activity to some level to help improve our health. Staying active should include exercise. It's, I think, a very important part of our health maintenance and planning for the future. Specifically, exercise that will strengthen our muscles and improve our neuromotor coordination and function, things like agility, balance, coordination, reaction time, and even speed and power, which we may not tend to think of that as, we're retired, we don't think about, I need speed, I need power. That's for my grandchildren, right? But as well for adults, we need some level of being able to propel ourselves a little bit quicker, especially when we want to prevent falls. My friend Carmine recently retired as fitness director from a continuing care retirement community on Long Island, very similar to this one. And he taught me what his staff has come to refer to as Carmine's Law. And so I told him, recently interviewed him for a podcast, that I'm going to use this now. I'm going to teach this as Carmine's Law in presentations, in my classes, and so on. So now it is official, it is academic, it is Carmine's Law. But Carmine's Law states that strength plus posture equals balance. And a lot of times we don't think of balance in that way, but I think it's important to think of it that way, because poor posture basically offsets the center of mass within our base of support. That's basically the definition of balance. That if you're standing, the area that are under your feet is the area in which you can control your balance. And your center of mass is where the mass of your body is kind of centered. And so if it's coming forward in that base of support, you're more likely to be falling forward, if it's to the side, or whatever direction it might be. And so what do we normally do to try and maintain our balance? We alter our stance in order to give ourselves a little bit more stability. You're standing on a rocking boat. You don't stand with your feet together, right, in the least amount of support on the sides that's rocking, because you're going to fall over. What we do, we spread our feet out and we give ourselves a little bit more support. And so some of us may find as we age and we're starting to be a little bit more concerned about our balance, we maybe walk with our feet farther apart. We take shorter strides so that we're spending less time in an unstable position. Well, what I want to talk about is kind of how we can use strength to better correct that. Balance training alone is not sufficient. You may maybe even participate in some training where you're on those Basu balls, those half inflated balls that are really hard to stand on, or padding like a foam pad that makes your basic support a little less stable, or maybe Tiffany has you standing on 1 foot in the gym, 1 feet, it's 1 foot, it's only 1 foot, and trying to work on just kind of maintaining balance and less of a base of support. That's good. It does help reduce the risk of fall. Strength training alone does not necessarily reduce the risk of falling. This is especially true when most of the resistance exercises that we might do are done on machines or in a stable position, where we are not having to maintain our own base of support. Often weight training is done with light weights. We want to remember too that strength is, in exercise science, we talk about it being measured as the 1 repetition maximum. It's the heaviest amount of weight you can lift for 1 repetition. And so if we're doing really light weights, we're not necessarily getting stronger, we're just getting better at lifting those light weights. And so we want to work on getting stronger in order to help improve our balance. And so postural training, when we talk about postural training, it's that segmental training to correct muscle imbalances, postural imbalances, weaknesses that may lead to certain structural misalignments so that our bodies aren't aligned within that base of support and we're more likely to fall. So a program of whole body strengthening exercises that includes activities that are improving your posture are going to go a long way to improve your balance and prevent the risk of falls. My next slide has this isn't working for me. There we go. Kind of a range of core postures. Maybe you've seen many of these. She's picking on him. I bet he doesn't have that one. The first one is sway back. I don't particularly like that image because it really isn't sway back as much as he appears to have very tight hamstrings, which causes his knees to be in a flexed position, which pushes his body backwards. And I meant to bring my laser pointer. Actually, on the slides, I meant to put some lines through the center of mass. But if you kind of just project down through about the center of his trunk area, down through his feet, you'll see that he's shifted his body position where, he's maintaining balance by arching backwards, but as he moves, he's going to be less stable. In the next one, it's a lot easier to see where that can affect your balance. It's a pretty extreme sway back. Now, many women may have grown up with a bit more of a sway back, particularly if you're a gymnast or just naturally kind of built in that way. Those of us men maybe have a little bit more beer belly, and I don't see that here, which is good. That extra weight in the stomach can tend to pull us forward, which puts us in a bit more of this lumbar lordosis type of frame. But more critical for most of us is that hip flexion at the hip, and we try to correct it by arching our back. That hip flexion comes from sitting a lot. When we're sitting all the time, my generation on the computer, well, more my kids' generation, more than my generation. I'm old enough that I didn't have computers through much of my younger years. But sitting at a desk all day tends to shorten up those hip flexors and puts us in a bit more of this lumbar lordosis position. Thoracic kyphosis can come from weak upper back muscles, sometimes an overly strong chest or just an unstretched chest. So we're kind of rolling those shoulders forward, hunching down over in a more anterior direction. That brings our body center mass a little bit more forward. Forward head lean, I think this is very common amongst the young kids today with their cell phones, walking around looking at them all the time. We're going to see a lot more problems with that in the generations to come. Good posture is where we kind of lift and lengthen that spine, we get our shoulders back, head up. Many of us were probably trained that way as children. I remember my parents and grandparents, sit up straight, and that was the rule. Now it's like, put your phone away, and that might get you to sit up straight. But we want good posture because, as you notice, first of all, the person is standing much taller. Everything is in alignment. There's not going to be as many problems with the vertebrae getting out of alignment or weak muscles, or short or long muscles, those types of things. So we want to focus on a good posture. Quite common among senior adults is the kyphotic posture. Some of this comes from osteoporosis as our bones weaken and maybe they begin to have some microfractures in it. The weight of the spine tends to compress a bit. We tend to hunch over a little bit. It also comes from, and probably more so from, weak muscles in the upper middle back. And the more we can work on those, focus on strengthening the neck, keeping the neck upright, keeping our shoulders back, the more we can kind of counteract some of that kyphosis. I'm 6'5". I am very prone to having a bit more of a kyphotic stance, or at least my head forward, because as I talk to people, I tend to hunch over and lean forward. I have to correct that. I also have a family history of a bit more kyphosis in the back as my parents and grandparents have aged. We've seen the same thing. So I know it is a concern across a lot of different age groups. But correcting this posture is really, to me, a matter of properly training the core. And this is where we're going to get into this talk about core training. And I'll ask you again, what do you think about when you think about core training? What comes to mind? Anybody have an answer for me?
Sit-ups.
Sit-ups, yeah. That's the immediate thing everybody goes to when we think of core training, is doing sit-ups. Well, if my purpose is to get myself in a more upright posture, how much do I need to be flexing my trunk and bringing it forward and working on, again, shortening those hips? Crunches, abdominal work is not really the best means of improving our core. I propose kind of another way of looking at the core rather than just simply the abdominal muscles, the muscles around the trunk, the lower back. I propose what physical therapists refer to as, and don't worry about reading the bottom. I know you cannot read that bottom. I can barely read it from here. But this is referred to as the spiral line in physical therapy. These are the muscles that really, to me, suit the core. You have basically the muscles that come down from the neck, the splenius muscles, or these muscles in the back of your neck. They come down and they're going to cross over, which are called the rhomboid muscles. So they cross your back and then they come around the front diagonally through what are called the serratus anterior muscles to your oblique muscles, come down along the side. And there's not going to be a quiz or test on this, so don't worry about knowing all the muscles. But coming down the side, we have the tensor fasciae latae muscle. It's the Starbucks muscle in the body, the latae muscle, right? And then it comes anteriorly, we have the tibialis anterior along your shin, goes underneath your foot. That tibialis anterior muscle kind of forms a stirrup under the foot with the posterior tibial muscle in the back of the leg. And so that braces up under your foot and helps you kind of control at the ankles. Think of maybe, as a child, you had like a little go-kart or something like that, and you controlled it with pulling the ropes or bridle on a horse. As we pull right and left, that's what's controlling it, keeping it stable. Having those muscles strong is going to help control your balance at your ankle. Then we come up through the back, through the hamstrings. And again, those are often very tight when we've been sitting a lot. And then they run up through the lower back, through what we refer to as the erector spinae muscles, all the way back up to the neck again. And so it forms this loop around from your head all the way down to your ankles. And when we think of balance from those muscles and think of those from the core and strengthening those, it gives us a more holistic, more whole body control of our balance. And so the exercises that I would want you to consider should involve many of those muscles. And remember, from Carmine's law, strength plus posture equals balance. And so if we can strengthen those muscles, align the body, we've taken great strides in terms of correcting some of the postural problems and working on whole body strengthening so that if we are stepping and we tend to lose our balance, the muscles are strong enough to counteract that movement and bring us in a more upright position. So postural training, to me, begins with correction. So correcting what is at fault, lengthening that which is short, and in shortening that which is too long. In other words, strengthening the muscles that are too stretched out or too weak. And the common weaknesses that affect balance are actually going to be in the upper back. With the rhomboid muscles, those are the muscles between your shoulder blades. the trapezius, the muscles in the upper neck, the shoulders, and lower back as well. All those muscles that form that spiral line we just looked at. And from an exercise standpoint, there's several movements to consider. This is where I'm going to step into exercise physiology mode a little bit. We have the squat, and all of you right now are in the beginnings of a squat. At the end of this presentation, you are going to squat to get up out of your chair and move. So every one of you can squat. The degree to which we can do that with great strength is going to vary, but most everybody can squat. Hip hinge is simply moving, flexing, and extending at the hip joint, and we can do that as well. Horizontal pulls and pushes are just in this direction. Many of you might do that if you go to the gym here and you do like bench press or whatever the equivalent on the machines are, or rows. Those are horizontal pushes and pulls. Vertical pull, pulling down. Vertical push, pushing up. And then carries are something we tend to think of just the burly strongman in the gym doing, where they carry heavy weights in each arm. But I bet all of you carry something at some point, whether a suitcase or grocery bags or something like that. That's a carry. And so the capacity to do that is going to help strengthen you, keep you better able to balance. And so the more we're doing things like that, doing weighted carries, the more we're able to strengthen the muscles that if I start to kind of lean off to one side and lose my balance, I have the muscles on the other side that can contract and bring me more upright. So hopefully that doesn't intimidate you too much, those types of exercise. Make sure I don't miss a page. I like to boil these down to my basic 5. I call them my basic 5. They don't really belong to me, but I've kind of embraced them as what I think are the 5 most basic exercises somebody should be doing in an exercise program: the squat, the deadlift, the bench press, the row, and the overhead press. Now, if these are intimidating you, let's discuss a little bit about how you can do these where they're going to be a little less intimidating. I'm not necessarily suggesting that you go to the gym, strap on the belt, grab the bar and deadlift it off the ground, hundreds of pounds like you might see power lifters and things doing. But think about the times in your day where you are having to pick something up off the ground, no matter what the weight is. That's a deadlift. And the more we can do, the stronger we're going to be. And the stronger we are, the more we can do that. And so there are variations of things that you can do with that. It might even be just simply picking up I don't know what all equipment they have in the gym here, maybe a kettlebell or a dumbbell or any kind of lightweight. Right? Pick up anything off of the ground can work to strengthen that. But the key is working on the hips doing the movement rather than your lower back doing the movement.
You show us that?
Huh?
Show us that.
How
you would do it.
Do the deadlift?
The hips move.
Well, the hip hinge is basically in this movement. So just kind of keeping my back in a normal, natural alignment and just all the movement at the hip joint. And you're going to pick something up. You want to use the legs too, because if you go from this position, there's generally a chance of using your lower back. Although if you can, I'm tight from sitting all day and lecturing, so if I can reach down the ground and pick something up, I still want to do that with a natural curvature in my spine and doing it at the hips rather than using my vertebrae. So that helps to strengthen not only the muscles of my hips, my hamstrings, to a certain degree the quadriceps, but also the muscles in your lower back. And all of that is now going to help you, because if I step off of it, something I trip, scared me. She thought I was going to fall. I can catch myself because I have the strength, and I can, rather than allowing gravity to keep moving me forward, I can contract these muscles in my hips, because the hips are a bit much stronger than the muscles in my back. If you looked at that previous slide, those muscles in the lower back are, they're not super big. They're, think of like the tenderloin when you get that, like filet mignon. The tenderloin is the cow's erector spinae muscles. They're much bigger than ours. Ours are much smaller. They're not nearly as strong, but your butt is big. Right? Your butt is strong, and especially if you've been exercising, so those muscles contract, they're going to prevent me from continuing to go forward because they can correct that and contract. And so the whole point with the exercise is to strengthen the muscles that can correct a perturbation of that balance, something that is causing me to fall out of my base of support. Moving in any direction, basic physics kind of tell you that you're going to continue, your body's going to continue to move in that direction unless another force acts on it to stop that motion. And so if I fall, what's stopping me from falling? The floor, right. We don't want the floor to stop us from falling because that's where we get hurt. We want to stop that fall before the fall initiates, or shortly after. Obviously, you can't stop it before because then you're not really falling, right? But as soon as we start finding ourselves moving in a direction that we don't want to go, we want the muscles and the strength to be able to correct that and move back. And it doesn't take a tremendous amount of strength. So I'm not talking about everybody, going out and getting weight belts and, gym, weightlifting shoes and knee wraps and all that kind of stuff. I don't want to come back here in another month and visit and see you all walking around, looking like you're bros at the gym. It's not necessary, but common things that we can do at any age, any gender, any interest in lifting can help facilitate getting strong enough to be able to minimize our risk of falls. And the first thing, again, is going to be focusing in on those postural things. Getting ourselves simply just to be able to stand and walk more upright is going to have tremendous benefit there. And then we begin to build on that. So strength, posture is what helps us to prevent our falls. Bench press, the row. Again, the row is just, if you're in a bent over position, you're just picking something up using your back to pull. You can do that from a seated position. Same with push-up, bench press. I don't have to put weight on a bench and do bench press. I can do even just starting off, just pushing off the wall is going to give me some strength. And so it's really just a matter of how can I overload the muscles to become a little bit stronger. Bands, you can use rubber bands. There's elastic tubes and things like that are great resistance to build strength. It doesn't require a gym. It doesn't require any fancy equipment. It just requires giving a little bit of extra load on the muscles. How many of you remember Jack LaLanne? Yeah. See, ask that to my students. They're like, who? I can ask you all, and you know who Jack LaLanne is. Remember Jack LaLanne's show back in the 60s? I remember coming home from elementary school and my mom watching that. But what did he do? He taught us all how to use household implements to be able to strengthen ourselves. A can of soup, or a jug of milk, or ideally, you don't want to use a jug of milk because it keeps getting emptier and emptier, and then you don't get stronger because you're not lifting more, you're lifting less every time you grab the jug. But, the point was using the things that you have, using a chair, or, just simply, learning to stand properly up and out of a chair is going to be beneficial. And so don't let this intimidate you, but kind of help find ways. And you have staff here that can really help you to how can I implement all this? Tiffany is fantastic. She's one of my longtime favorite students. I know she can help you, and if she isn't the person directly working with that, she's got the staff here that can help. And so those types of activities can be done pretty readily if we just use a little creativity, figure out what do we need to strengthen ourselves. We mentioned a little bit about the abdominal exercise for the core. And remember, I'm shifting here. My slide isn't going. There we go. We missed one, I think. There we go. I don't like wearing a mic on my tie because I tend to gesture. Sorry about that. But remember, we're not after trunk flexion per se, because that's not going to necessarily help us with our balance. We want to do the things that are going to help to counteract what could cause a fall. And so our focus should be on things like anti-flexion, rather than being able to just simply bend. What can keep us from bending? And then to an extent, anti-extension, which kind of sounds counter when I say not to necessarily focus on doing abdominal exercises, but it's doing the exercises that are going to prevent us from being pulled forward. And so using kind of the lower back, using the abdominal muscles, using the muscles around the waist to control our trunk position, but also using those other muscles that we indicated were in the spiral line. We want to then focus on more multi-directional movements as well, and things that are going to help prevent. Anti-rotation is important too, because we want to be able to be strong enough that something's not going to pull us in the opposite direction that we don't want to go. So we want to focus on also emphasizing acceleration and deceleration. You remember back from science class what acceleration, deceleration is. Acceleration, we want to be able to move quickly. And so if I'm falling, I want to be able to quickly decelerate whatever is causing me to go in that direction, and then quickly accelerate in the opposite direction in order to correct myself. If we aren't able to do that, the tendency is going to be continue to move as gravity pulls our body toward the floor, right? It's going to stop our fall. So we want to stop the fall with all these muscles that we have inside our bodies. There are a couple of good exercises to start with. Many of you have probably heard of planks. They're not the most fun exercise. They're certainly not the most exciting exercise, but they're a very good exercise for building a basic stability in that entire spiral line, because you have to hold everything in a neutral position in a natural body stance, in a natural good posture. The women in the picture here are doing what's called a Pallof press, although it doesn't look like anything's attached to their hands, which kind of confuses me a little bit, because basically what the Pallof press is, you can do it standing, you can do it in a split stance like they are, but you're basically just having something attached at the hands that is pulling you in a direction of rotation. And what you're doing is pulling that back to keep your body square, and then you just kind of press in this direction. It's really good for working all those muscles to help give you that anti-rotational type of postural control and strength. And you can do a lot of different variations off of it. Those are really great starting points. Others are certain throws in any direction, because it helps you accelerate. So maybe you with your partners, your friends, you can throw medicine balls or throw things at each other. I'm not encouraging that. But if they have medicine balls and things like that, just lightly rotating and throwing that gets you that more powerful acceleration, and then you have to kind of decelerate to stop yourself, can help control that. So these are all just the types of exercises that we can do to help build that more dynamic strength within the muscles. And then kind of back to posture, there's some other exercises you can do. Chin tucks are always good too, where you just kind of bringing your chin back. It's really more retraction than tucking, but helping to strengthen those muscles in around the neck. How many have heard of bird dogs or Supermans? These are just kind of, bird dog is where I'm going to demonstrate it. I'm not necessarily dressed for it, but you're kind of in a 4-point position, and you just raise one arm, kind of like a bird dog pointing or pointer. And doing this, I'm working on those muscles across the spine to help strengthen them and align them. Superman's I'm not going to do, because I got to lay face down on the ground, and I don't necessarily want to do it. And with the mic on, that's going to be horrible sound for everybody. That's just kind of doing the same thing, except you're laying flat. Those are really good exercises, and you can do those anywhere. You can do them in your homes. You can do them in the gym. You can do them wherever. Retractions, like this woman's doing, probably can't tell very much. Just taking a band and pulling back helps to correct those muscles and posture. Again, the focus should be not just doing it with your shoulders, but really focusing in on pulling your shoulder blades back together behind you. And that helps you to kind of get that more upright posture and the strength in the upper back that's going to give you a little bit better posture. And face pulls are another one where you can pull, and you can use bands, and you're basically just kind of doing the same thing, but you're doing a little bit more what's called external rotation in the arms in order to strengthen your shoulder as well as those upper back muscles. Very good exercises. And the other is just practice. What is it that is affecting your balance or your posture? Where are your weaknesses at? Find those weaknesses and work to correct those, and just keep working to correct those. And very quickly, as you address the deficits, you're going to improve your your balance and significantly reduce your risk of falls. And now I'm open to just questions. Yes.
In July, and I fell backwards, and it was when I was turning, and what really made it worse was slippers that I have on my feet. They were stepping slippers, so I'm turning to go to in a hurry catch the phone, and as I turned, the slipper went one way, and my body was going the other way. I fell right on my head, had a concussion and recovery in the ER. I notice now, I'm very aware of it, that turning is going to, if anything is going to happen to me again, it's going to be in a turn. There's just something going on there, balance. And I don't know what exercise I'm talking about.
I discussed my epigenetics test with True Diagnostic co-founder Hannah Wendt in episode 162. Epigenetic testing measures baseline and changes in your pace of aging, giving you the power to steer your anti-aging or health and wellness journey in the right direction. I learned that I am aging well. Click on the affiliate link in the episode description, use the promo code AGEWELL, and receive a 12% discount on your epigenetics test and monitor your pace of aging. All those like anti-rotational types of movements, the Palloff press, or again, even a medicine ball throw, even just against resistance, just having something to resist you and just rotating is strengthening those muscles that help control that. But I'd say the more important step, stop wearing those slippers.
Yeah. He almost fell. He said, I took those damn slippers that you gave me and threw them in the garbage.
That's what we should have done. You could have saved your friend from almost falling.
I didn't realize.
And flip-flops, all those sandals, anything that's not stable. I'm kind of looking around to see what kind of shoes people have on. You're wearing those sandals? Those are nice because they have some ankle support around them. And they're going to at least, they keep your feet cool, but they're holding your feet in place. Slippers are not a good thing. Look around your dwellings, your apartments or houses. Whenever I don't know what kind of domiciles everybody is in here, but what are things that are potential risks of fall? Loose carpets, things on the floor that maybe you turn and you don't see.
Not lifting your feet when you walk.
Mm-hmm. Another important aspect of strengthening, the more we can strengthen those muscles so that we can actually lift the feet up more, that's going to help. I talk a lot about power and speed. Again, we don't need power and speed because we're long jumping, or vertical jumping, or any of those types of things. But when we walk, the harder we can drive our legs forward, the better we can propel ourselves, right? So that we don't have to shuffle. And because part of the reason too we tend not to pick up our feet is because as we pick up our feet, we're off balance, right? And if we're off balance, we're in a scary position and at risk of falling. And so not picking up your feet creates a risk of falling because you can trip more, but it also, in our minds, might be preventing a risk of falling. And so we want to be trying to get ourselves so that we're strong enough that we can feel comfortable in that period of time and walk where our foot is off the ground and our other foot is in contact with the ground. That's a lot of hip strength. And again, it's those muscles throughout that spiral line and wearing the right shoes. Yeah.
It shows a great array of strength-training exercises, but up with a lot of that, as we get older, we need stretching. Is there a component of which you're doing with regard to stretching?
When it comes to stretching, I generally promote stretching when you need it. So if you have a deficiency, if you have an area where you are too short, so if you're in that more kyphotic kind of posture, not the kind of kyphotic posture that's from osteoporosis where the vertebra is hunched over, but where your shoulders are arched, kind of coming forward, then you need to stretch out that chest a bit more so that you can help get those shoulders back. So maybe doing some chest stretching there. If the hamstrings are tight, some stretching is good. When it comes to stretching, I generally lean toward stretching as much as your body or what your body needs to correct deficiencies, but focus more on the strength. Because what can end up happening, we have an hour to exercise on the day. I mean, what your schedules are like for exercise, but say, a lot of people have 1 hour of exercise. They'll spend a half hour stretching, and then they only do like a half hour weight, so they don't get all of the stuff that they really need, or they don't do some cardio. And so if we put too much effort into the areas that we don't need it, then we kind of waste that time. I don't know if I used the phrase opportunity cost much when Tiffany was a student, but it's a term I use a lot in my classes, that we have a certain amount of time available to whatever we're doing. And anything that we do either contributes to our goals or takes away from those goals. And so if I only have an hour a day to exercise and I'm spending all my time doing something that I'm really good at, then I don't get better at the things that I'm not good at. I don't improve the deficiency. So if my flexibility is sufficient, and that's really what we need as we age, is sufficient flexibility. I mean, can you bend down, pick something up off the ground without your back going out or anything like that? Or can you put your shoes on, those types of things? If you can't, then we need to correct those a little bit more. But do you need to be able to grab your leg and put it behind your head? I actually had a student once that sat in my kinesiology class. This was before I was at Western Oregon University. She was a dancer, and she was sitting in the back of the class, and she was just like taking notes, and she had her leg up behind her head. I'm like, could you please stop that? You're making me hurt. And we don't need that kind of flexibility, but stretching is definitely important. I would recommend doing it after the strengthening exercises, after your body is all warmed up, so you get more benefit out of it, so that it becomes more permanent change in your range of motion. But it should be a balanced approach. If that answers the question. Yes?
Yeah, I'm really glad you talked about the core. Here, I always thought the core was in the belly and the chest area. But you define that it starts in the back, goes down the legs, and then back up the front.
Yep.
It's the whole body.
Yep, it's the whole body. And I think it's important, especially as we look at things like posture and balance and those types of things, if we don't consider what's going on at the ankle, the knee, the hip, the neck, then we're going to miss out on a lot of opportunity to really correct the core. If we go in and all we're doing is crunches, and you have really short hips to begin with, it's not going to help you to begin to stand more upright and prevent those falls. So what ends up happening is if you're doing that and you got that strength, you kind of take on kind of the gait that you might see in people with Parkinson's, where it's that kind of they call festation gait, where you're kind of leaning forward. Your body, the reason people walk like that is because their center of mass is leaning too far forward, and they're almost constantly in a state of falling. I mean, that's basically what walking or any kind of locomotion is. We make ourselves unbalanced, we push ourselves forward so that we fall forward, we catch ourselves, and then we take the next foot and step that way. But the abdominal muscles, I don't know, maybe going six-pack abs, that's great. You want to show off at the beach, or do they have a pool here? Yeah, so you want to go around the pool and show off your abs. That's great. Diet generally is going to improve that the most. But too much focus on the abs can take away from all the other aspects of balance that we need to work on.
I'd like you to just demonstrate walking rather than people shuffle. I notice, just in general, as you age, people, I won't say men particularly, but that's often the case. Rather than heel placing, because of it's fear of falling, isn't it?
Yeah.
Can you demonstrate correct walking procedure?
I don't know, do I walk correctly? I have a really long gait. I'm a brisk walker, so I take long strides.
Just a step.
So
steps.
A stepping is just, basically you want to maintain as much balance and support or basis, control of your body weight over your base of support until you get the leg forward, and then you're going to just kind of fall forward. You step, so it's kind of heel contact. You're going onto your toe. You're shifting all your weight now onto this foot as this foot comes off, and then the next foot comes forward. And again, you're just constantly heel to the base of support and toe off, and then just shifting that way.
Rather than this.
Right, because again, if we're shuffling, we're not going as far, first of all, so we're not going to get to where we want to go fast enough. But we're also not getting off the ground enough that we increase our risk of falling, because anything could be, I trip over lines in the cement. So if there's anything that, it's like coming up onto this, what do you call these things? On this stage or whatever, but if I can't lift my leg high enough, I run that risk of kind of hitting onto that and tripping. And I do that. Of course, I'm not a youngster either anymore. So, but some of that is just kind of clumsiness. I'm just not thinking about how high that step is. But if there's something that's not in our line of sight, and we tend not to lift our feet high enough, we're at a much greater risk of falling.
This doesn't really have to do with posture, but are there some either stretches or exercises that a person could do to help not having cramps in your legs? Muscle cramps.
Yeah, cramps generally are not necessarily going to be the muscle being too short. One thing I like for cramps, I like spicy pickle juice. That's what I always take for cramps, even just pickle juice. But a lot of times, the cramps are due to some electrolyte imbalances and things like that. So that might be part of it. That's why if I'm cramping, I have a big jar of, I think it's Dave's, it was originally Dave's spicy pickles. Once my kids have eaten the pickles, I just keep the juice, and I keep refilling it with, I buy a gallon of this spicy pickle juice. It doesn't have to be spicy if your stomach can't handle it, but just pickle juice itself is actually pretty good. Not necessarily. It's usually much more some kind of electrolyte imbalance. But if for stretching, it depends. Basically, just whatever is cramping, you want to lengthen. And so, if it is your calf, then you just want to be doing something where you're bringing the toe up toward your knee, and you could just simply lean up against the wall and just stretch that out. If it's deeper in the muscle, the soleus, if you bend the knee, that's going to give a little bit better stretch to the soleus muscle. If it's in your chest, just anything that's going to pull your arm back. So sometimes just going in the doorway and just stretching that way can help. So just if you're cramping and you need to stretch, just make sure that you're lengthening the muscle that needs to be stretched. Does that help? Try the pickle juice.
It's mustard.
Yeah.
You can carry this little yellow mustard, you can carry this little pack with you in case you're out on the road or someplace.
Yeah. And it's just something in the spiciness of it that triggers something neurologically that relaxes the neurons. There's actually a product, I can't remember what it's called. I think it's called Hot Shots, which is ridiculously expensive. And that's why I just go with the pickle juice, because it's cheap. It's always left over from the pickles. Or I can even just buy it by the gallon. But it does something neurologically, something kind of beyond my comprehension, but it triggers something that helps to stop those cramps. Yes? What's that? Coconut? Really? Never tried that. And it's, again, probably more the electrolytes and things that are in it. Yeah?
We have a pool here at the Dallas Retirement Village. How should we be using the pool to accomplish this strength and balance?
It's a great, especially we're talking about working on your gait and improving, getting the legs up and stuff. Walking in the water is an excellent way of doing that. Just getting about chest high or chest deep water, and just work on gait, working on getting those legs up, working on a natural long stride. Water is a natural resistor, so just moving your body in multi-directions can help with that. I think water is a great therapeutic tool for building some initial strength. You can't fall and hurt yourself in the water unless you stay under the water, and I recommend that. But if you fall in the water, you just kind of buoy, water's going to buoy you up. And so it's a really good place to practice some of these things and do some of these exercises. Chest, if you're just kind of take the water and you're pushing against it. If they have paddles or anything that can help add resistance to that, that can help as well.
We actually have water aerobics classes 5 days a week.
Those are great too. So sign up for all of those. That would be helpful. You're retired, right? You got all the time in the world to exercise. It's us young people. I'm 50. I'm going to be 59 in 2 weeks. So I'm not a youngster. We're all young. But, the waters are great. Water aerobics is a really, really good way to work on these things we're talking about that are going to help correct balance. What else? Can I see other hands? Hopefully this was helpful. Good. Come back anytime.
Thank you.
Thank you. You're welcome. Thank you for listening. I hope you benefited from today's podcast. And until next time, keep aging well.